This is Kim Meyer, host of Choose to Rise. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Leadership Show, the place where leaders learn more about themselves and how they can shift the way they lead. Because when leaders get better, families get better, communities get better, and the world gets better. And now your host, Chief Leadership Officer of Shepherd Revolution, David Prosper.
If this is your first time listening to the Leadership Show, we want to personally welcome you. We started this podcast because too many of us have been hurt, underappreciated, and abused by unhealthy leaders. We believe that when leaders get better, families get better, communities get better, our workplace gets better, and ultimately our world gets better. We start all of our shows with a verse of the day. And we can find it in Isaiah 48, verse 13. It says, "My hand laid the foundations of the earth, and my right hand spread out the heavens. When I call to them, they stand forth together." Think about that. God, being the creator, laid the foundations of the earth, spread out the heavens. Now, think about that as a leader. If we're created in God's image and we're co-creators, that means we can set the foundation for the next generation of leadership by starting today. And with our hands, that's what we actually use to implement those things, which actually leads us into our show. We're going to be talking about the hands of a leader and how we can implement those things. Again, Isaiah 48, verse 13. "My hand laid the foundation of the earth, and my right hand spread out the heavens. When I call to them, they stand forth together." Now, there are two kinds of leaders in our world: leaders who command and leaders who connect. I believe that transformation only happens when we apply learned information. Our shows are for working professionals, busy parents, on-the-go students, and aspiring leaders. I want you to ask yourself this question. Are you new to leadership, or are you an experienced leader? Hopefully, at the end of today's show, you'll learn whether you're a new leader or you're an experienced leader and how you can actually move from a new leader to an experienced leader. And if you're an experienced leader, this can be a reminder for you. So let's recap the previous show that we did about the Lead Like Jesus series. We talked about two roles of leadership. Role number one, a visionary role, which is setting the course and destination. Number two, we talked about implementation role, which is doing things right with a focus on serving. And we also talked about how a compelling vision tells people who they are, whose they are, where they're going, and what would guide their journey. Before trying to influence and engage others and working with you to create a compelling vision, you need to be clear about your own personal purpose. We also looked at, servant leadership starts with a vision and then ends with a servant heart that helps people live according to that vision. So let's jump into today's show. Let's jump right in. Leading like Jesus is more than a theory. I'll say that again. Leading like Jesus is more than a theory. It's about changing the way you lead others. It means making a commitment to change your behavior to be more like Jesus. And it means asking yourself this question: what would Jesus do before you act as a leader? Now, we're going to talk about how servant leaders are just very similar to performance coach. They empower others, they coach others, and they bring others to perform at a high level. And there's three parts of becoming a performance coach. Number one, performance planning. This is all about providing direction and setting goals. Number two, day-to-day coaching. This involves helping people win to accomplish their goals by observing their performance, praising progress, and redirecting efforts that are off base. And number 3, performance evaluation. This requires sitting down with the people and evaluating their performance over time. Now, I have a question for you. Which of these 3 activities do you think gets the most attention and effort by managers? My guess, and most people guess, would be performance evaluation. And unfortunately, that is the truth. At the end of the year, most people in organizations get a performance review versus day-to-day coaching. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of clarity of purpose and planning for the performance role of a servant leader. If there's not clear communication of what a good job will look like when it's accomplished, somebody will end up frustrated, either the leader or the follower or both. In a personal story, I was working for this organization and there was a lot of hidden expectation and a lot of ambiguity in the communication as far as the expectation. So I took it upon myself to be a self-starter, and I was proactive in meeting some things that I thought was necessary. And then there was a huge explosion where this leader confronted me and said that was not the expectation. So I replied to this leader and said, hey, what was the expectation? How come you didn't share it with me? And this leader response was, sometimes we just watch and wait to see what you do. Now that is the definition of an unhealthy relationship, working environment, and poor leadership. Because Jesus told his followers essentially what he wanted them to do. He was very explicit. He painted the picture, he exemplified it, and he reminded them of what that expectation is. And sadly, the organization, a lot of those leaders exemplify those same characteristics and behaviors. They never explicitly tell the expectation, but they just wait. And what happens is, I've seen a lot of the teammates and members, the high turnover that constantly happens, instead of just saying, hey, here's our expectation. Here's what we expect from you. And here's how it looked. Let me coach you. And that organization, the revolving door, goes back and forth, going hire people, fire people, or people quit. And it doesn't grow. And until that change, the organization will only grow or only move to that leadership who is the head in charge, the CEO of that organization. I will leave the name out. Coaching, however, is the most important in servant leadership because it is helping people accomplish their goals. And I remember I would talk to my wife and I would tell her the difference between a consultant versus a coach. A consultant just comes and tell you what you're supposed to do. And oftentimes what I've seen in my coaching world is that people aren't that receptive when someone tells us what to do. But a coach helps us discover some of those places that we haven't known before. It removes the blinders. It brings the blind spots to the surface. And then when we can see the blind spots, then we can navigate through it. So for example, a consultant will come and tell you, hey, you need to do a better job at leading. A coach would tell you or ask you, how can you grow as a leader? Two different things. A consultant will tell you you need to do a better job as a leader, and a coach will come and ask, how can you do a better job as a leader? Two different things. Coaches bring buy-in, and that's how Jesus led from a coaching perspective. Now, once goals are clear, servant leaders should be able and available to teach others the answer. So as a servant leader, you paint the picture and then you go behind the people and you support them so that they can fulfill that mission, that vision, and that goal. Servant leaders aren't threatened by people around them who perform well because they want to see their people win. And I remember having this conversation with a number of leaders, and we talk about there are a lot of leaders in leadership positions who are insecure. So when they see a fellow leader under them or a team member under them that may make their power or position look very shaky, they feel insecure and they want to invoke their own agendas, their own thoughts, and they want to suppress those who are beneath them instead of uplifting them. Servant leadership is all about uplifting the people underneath you versus being intimidated or threatened by them, because we want our people to win. I remember when I was a leader at this organization, and one of my teammates, one of my staff, he said, "Sorry, David, I took over and I didn't want to overstep, and I know you're in charge." I looked at him and said, "What you did was great. If you're winning, we're winning." And that brings me so much joy as a servant leader, because it's not all about us. It's about our team. It's about the people that we get to serve every single day. So I have a question for you. How do you help people get A's? How do you raise children to be responsible citizens? To answer that question, we will follow how Jesus transformed his disciples from untrained newbies to transformational leaders. When Jesus first met his disciples, they were in ordinary occupation, and he called them to be fishers of men. Each brought life experiences and skills, and they had no practical knowledge on how to fulfill this role. He told them, "I want you to be fishers of men," but they didn't know how to do it. But after 3 years under Jesus' leadership, the disciples were transformed from untrained newbies to fully equipped, inspiring, and spiritually grounded transformational leaders that were able to fulfill the Great Commission to go out into all the nation and spread the good news. Now, you might be saying, okay, how did he take a newbie into a transformational leader? Or how can I move from these stages? And I truly believe that there are 4 stages of learning in leadership. Number 1, the newbie stage. This is when we're entering the learning process through an orientation phase, and we need basic information before we can progress. Newbies typically need to feel that someone in the know thinks that their work is important enough to invest time and energy to teach. They want to feel heard. They want to be seen. They want to feel that they can make a difference so that they can find that strength and that hope to continue to persevere. Now, level 2 is proficient leaders. These are people who are training, who have not yet mastered all the information and skills to work alone. They typically need to be assured that they're doing the right thing in the right way and be corrected when they're not. Number 3, the disciple phase, the disciple stage. This is when they've progressed to a point when all they need from a leader is to be told when and where to apply their skills. If they are ignored by non-engaging leaders, the disciple quietly drifts into apathy or retreat from taking risks due to feeling of loss, of incompetence, or connection to their calling. So each stage is important for the leaders to continue to invest. There's going to be some stages you invest less, and there's going to be some stages you invest more. But as a leader who are developing other leaders, it is critical to continue to invest, to continue to remind the leaders that they're headed in the right direction, remind them of the vision, and correct behaviors or when they're off kilter to bring them back to where their goal is, or the goal of the organization. The other day I had a meeting with my team, Team Shepherd Revolution, and I showed them the vision of what we're going to be creating. We're going to be creating a summer camp for leaders, a youth leadership summer camp, with the goal of creating a school long-term. I showed them this first diagram of the ideal look of success. So let me paint this for you. Point A is all the way at the bottom, and point B is all the way at the top. Now, the ideal of success, the ideal world of success, is that that arrow goes from point A to point B, and it doesn't break a line. But realistic success is another diagram for point A, point B being at the highest, point A being at the lowest. And then there's a line and there's squiggly, and it's all over the place, and all over the place, and it's all over the place. And then it gets to B. And that is the essence of leadership. And that's what leaders go through going on this journey. There's distractions of life. There's financial, there's health, there's relational. There's all these things that come up in our lives that take us off the journey, takes us off the purpose, takes us off the path as we're trying to get to point B, which is our vision, our end destination. So again, it is important for leaders to continually to invest in their leaders. Some is going to be more and some is going to be less. And then the last stage, the last level of when a leader moves from a newbie to a transformational leader. These leaders are people fully develop this. They fully develop their skills. They're confident. They're motivated to produce excellent results as individual performers as well. They also have the wisdom and insight to teach and develop others. They need to be given the opportunity and challenge to pass on what they know to the next generation of learners and leaders. So let's summarize what we talked about today. We talked about 3 parts of becoming a performance coach. Number 1, performance planning. Number 2, day-to-day coaching. And number 3, performance evaluation. In most of our organizations, we typically see the performance evaluation at the end of the year. If we want to revolutionize the way we lead, we have to do day-to-day coaching. We have to have performance planning. All 3 of those things create an environment where not only the organization or the family or the tribe thrives, but the leaders as well thrive. Then we talked about the 4 stages of learning a new task or becoming a transformational leader. Number 1 is the newbie stage. As someone just starting out, this is green, wet behind the ears, as they say. Number 2, they're proficient. There's someone in training, they're getting things and they're understanding, they're able to apply some of the things that they've learned. Number 3 are the disciples. These people are capable of working on their own. They're proactive. They're independent thinkers. They take action. They're goal oriented. And number 4, transformational leaders. These are the leaders who are highly skilled, not just highly skilled as a leader, but highly skilled and able to teach others how to lead effectively. Well, that's all for today's episode. Make sure you join us every other Wednesday of each month for a new episode. We're on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And I truly believe in the value of leaving a comment or asking a question so that I may engage with you. My intention is not just to hear myself on this podcast, but to engage with you, hear your question, hear your thoughts, most of all, hear your heart. So leave us a review so that this podcast can reach more leaders like yourself. And next time, you're not going to want to miss. We have a new leadership series coming up. We're going to be talking about how to reinvent yourself as a leader. As we do this, I want you to be a part of this. So subscribe today. And I want you to remember this. If we as leaders are to set ourselves apart, we must start by leading through love, which always comes from the heart.
Thank you for joining us here at the Leader Shift Show. If you'd like access to additional resources and insight, text Leader Shift to 345-345 or visit theleadershiftshow.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please let us know and spread the word by giving us a review on iTunes. You can listen to our show on iTunes, Success Radio, Spotify, Google Play, and the IB Network on Spreaker.com. If you have a question for David, send it our way at prosper@shepherdrevolution.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time here on the Leader Shift Show.